In the constantly changing world of fundability, the big question is this: how are entrepreneurs and real estate investors like us, ones who want to grow our businesses and who are tired of paying for really expensive alternative lending, how do we tap into the most inexpensive money available and do it without the hassle of typical borrowing? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. Welcome to the Get Fundable podcast with your host, Merrill Chandler.
Welcome. Merrill Chandler here, your host of the Get Fundable universe, and especially the Get Fundable podcast. In this episode, we are going to crush it. I don't know when you're listening to this, but in this moment, there's a big brouhaha about the administration's desire to have a new credit bureau. And what does this mean? And people are freaking out about because some news outlets say that at some point they want to get rid of the credit bureaus. What is really going on and what's happening? And in this episode, we're going to make sense of what is at stake, what may be happening in truth, and we're going to read between the lines of these news articles and come to discern what is actually happening and what's even possible. We'll be right back with the Get Fundable podcast. Welcome back, everybody, to the Get Fundable podcast. Woo! I got to tell you, there's been some exciting things happening over this last, probably 10 days, maybe 2 weeks. The administration, and again, just me saying those words, I want to make sure everybody knows that I am apolitical. We're going to be talking about finances today. The administration has proposed the creation of a new credit bureau that would be governed by the CFPB, the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. And as some articles have, whether responsibly or irresponsibly said in their attention-grabbing headlines, they've actually said that that this new bureau may replace the current bureaus. And that has thrown a whole lot of people on the spectrum of into a tizzy or huge question marks over the head saying, what the hell is happening? So this episode is about really drilling down and taking a look at what the articles are saying, what's being proposed, what the possible intentions are, because notice, if you've read any of these articles, there's not a whole lot of quotes from the administration or even people from the CFPB, the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. There are very few quotes coming from the powers that be, and yet these articles are stirring things up. So let's take a look at this, right? I speak specifically of the Yahoo News and Forbes in their review of what this proposal, and I don't even know if it's a proposal yet for the administration. It's like exploratory committee, right? So what's at stake here is a centralized government authorized credit bureau that is actually managed and regulated by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Now, these articles talk about it competing with Experian, Transunion, and Equifax, right? The three big bureaus. Now, I'm going to be throwing a lot of things in here. First of all, there's not just three credit bureaus. There's Inferion, and there is Innovus. There are other credit bureaus who serve other markets. Right? So first of all, the question is going to be, there's even LexisNexis, which serves other markets. There's a whole bunch of credit bureaus, what are called consumer reporting agencies, meaning they report on consumer topics, behaviors, etc. So when these articles pit this new government-sponsored bureau against Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax, there's even more that we have to account for. There's more credit bureaus that we have to account for. There's entire bureaus that do, if you're doing a government security check, they don't pull your purely financial bureau like Chase would or a lender would. They pull specific bureaus to check different things about your history. So every credit bureau in its essence is measuring is collecting certain data. Now, remember, if you've been to my boot camp, if you've been to my boot camp, you'll remember this. If you haven't, then we're going to do a little quick review of the players in the credit system. First of all, there's you, the borrower. Okay, and we're going to be talking about borrowers and the different types of borrowers there are in just a minute. But borrowers file an application with a lender to borrow money. That lender sends an inquiry, and most of us have probably heard of an inquiry, sends an inquiry to the credit bureaus. But the credit bureaus actually have FICO software on their mainframes, and this inquiry is filtered through the FICO software. So when it downloads the data, bureaus collect data. This is so important for the rest of our conversation today. Bureaus collect data. FICO scores data. So when somebody's talking about, when these articles refer to credit bureaus and their ratings, you guys, credit bureaus don't rate their own data. A couple of exceptions where they have a separate company. So if you go to, let's say, Transunion, and you want to buy a Transunion credit score, well, first of all, understand that credit score is not used generally by lenders. The Transunion credit score is not used by lenders. FICO credit scores are used by lenders. But if you decide to buy one, as irrelevant as it may be, you're buying it from a separate company than the actual Transunion Credit Bureau. It may be a wholly owned subsidiary, but the Fair Credit Reporting Act does not allow a bureau to rate its own data. It doesn't have ratings. So when you read in these articles, the credit bureau ratings, let's keep all of the parties where they belong, guys. Let's keep our heads on straight so that we can understand what's really going on. So back to our lenders send an inquiry to the credit bureau. They grab the data at the credit bureau level, and it filters through FICO scoring software. The credit ratings come from FICO for more than 90% of all lending decisions. More than 90% of inquiries, they all use FICO for this purpose. That's downloaded to the lender. The lender reviews the data and filters the data even further through its own underwriting software and adds the credit score from FICO as part of that evaluation. The lender approves or denies the application, not the credit bureaus and not FICO. Do we understand this? This is the first place we got to be clear, or nothing else we talk about is going to make sense. Lenders approve or deny the application based on the data that is downloaded from the bureaus and filtered through FICO's scoring service. All right, now we've got to understand how this works before we move forward. Now, why does the administration feel that there's a need to have a new credit bureau? Well, the first proposal that in record comes from an independent organization that actually proposed it to Biden, and Biden picked it up as one of the ideas that he felt would be important to his administration and spoke about it in this last election run-up. Okay. Why it's resurfacing now is because he's sitting there, he's in his first 100 days of office, and he is looking for how to create the most amount of equality the fastest. And it's not just financial equality, it's equality at all levels. That's one of his big things. And again, I'm not for or against. I'm saying that his objectives are to create financial equality. Now, and so the current media is making it sound like that the administration is literally is out for blood and wants to destroy the current system. All right. So now, while these articles, especially Forbes, while the Forbes article makes good, there's some excellent points there. There's not enough of a drill down, and that's why I got to weigh in. That's why it's the truth you trust, right? It's what we're looking for you to be able to understand what's actually happening and how to do the math so that we can understand what's up, how this proposal may actually serve some of our fellow citizens without creating any damage anywhere else. More on that in a moment. Now, since FICO, since the data from the credit bureaus are not rated at the bureaus, they're rated by FICO, and since lenders are in charge of lending, we have to talk about what are the kind of some of the problems that the articles are implying, but don't actually exist. So let's look at this little I call it a triangle because you got the borrower, your lender, the bureaus, and FICO in the middle filtering the data. Now, lenders lend their own money to borrowers, and they're going to defend in court being forced to use an unproven rating system if this new bureau replaces all the other bureaus, right? Let's just go with what the articles are saying. I'm not saying that this is true, and I'm not saying the administration is saying this is true. I'm going off of what the articles are implying, or sometimes even boldly say. So this new bureau is not a proven entity. So imagine FICO has been scoring data for almost 70 years. It's got 4 versions of software that it has proven over and over and over again, so much so that 90% of every lending decision in this country uses FICO data in its approval process. So it's proven. Lenders trust it. And if lenders are trusting it, it's very unlikely they're not going to just grab some new bureau and say, woohoo, let's take this new bureau's data and a government, let's say that the government proposes to use a new algorithm. All right, what's inferred is that the new bureau will rate things differently, right? And so Experian and Transunion actually tried this once. The 3 credit bureaus got together, formed a consortium, formed a company of which they partially own. It's called Vantage. And they created a score called Vantage Score. And if you've been in any of my boot camps or any of my podcasts or anything else, I call it a FICO score, because if it's not FICO and lenders aren't using it, it's relatively worthless. You may look at it and based on studies, it's typically and significantly higher as a score than many FICO scores. So it's misleading, right? Well, the 3 bureaus got together and tried to create a score separate from FICO, and it hasn't got any traction. Very, 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 very little traction, and FICO continues to be the trusted source of lending decisions in this country. Well, having said that, that was a Vantage Score, I believe, was almost 15 years ago that it was proposed as a replacement. So I don't believe the administration writing an executive order or anything else. I don't believe that all of a sudden there's going to be a new scoring model that's going to be used that lenders will trust. And if lenders don't trust it, their money's at stake. So if they don't trust it, they're not going to use it. Now, people are saying, so there comes, so let's pretend there's a pitch battle, right? Not going to come to this. Let's pretend there's a pitch battle. Well, the government, the feds can try to nationalize FICO. Do you think that's going to happen? Honestly, do you think that they're going to nationalize FICO? No, it's not going to happen. FICO just has to submit an injunction order, and that's going to quickly hit the Supreme Court. Right now, based on the temperament and interpretive capacity of the Supreme Court, they're not going to nationalize anything. And so FICO, its algorithms, its IP, its intellectual property is going to remain safe. So then what, as a corollary to that, the bureaus, the government's not going to nationalize the 3 credit bureaus, and especially since there's not 3, there's at least 8 used for different purposes. And there's more than that, but for the big purposes. So they're not going to nationalize that. That's why they want to start their own. We'll get into how this actually fits in our current model in a moment. But if they're not going to nationalize FICO, and lenders aren't going to use some upstart algorithm to measure the quality of lending for lender dollars, we're at an impasse, because we're at an impasse, and it would be a long drawn out. I don't even know if it would be a long drawn out battle, because the Supreme Court would get involved very quickly. Now, cut to, as directors say, cut to. Now let's take a look at what Biden is looking to address, right? There's a law, it's called the Equal Opportunity Act, and there's equal opportunity lending. And what that means is that anybody of any race, creed, gender, sexual orientation, or otherwise can fill out an application, and it can be considered fairly by the lender. Now, there is a significant lack of equal best way to say this, because I want to make sure that this sinks in. We're going to talk about manual underwriting and automatic underwriting in a moment, but everybody in this country cannot qualify for current lender financing, like top tier bank low interest financing, because FICO measures people who already have been approved and already have trade lines, credit cards, credit lines, retail cards, even. And guys, we're not even talking about the value, high value versus low value. We're talking about FICO measures people who've already been approved for credit. Now, over the last few years, FICO's been expanding into non-traditional trade lines, right? Meaning, how do they capture rents? How do they capture payment on utilities, payment on rents, payment on childcare, right? How do they utilities, gas, electric, telephone, cell phone bills? How do they capture that? And many of my tribe already, you guys have asked about the Experian. The Experian Boost program. And these are ways in which they're expanding the ability to collect data. And I've told you clearly, and I'll reemphasize that, I've told you clearly that Chase is not going to give you a $50,000 business line of credit based on your paying your rent on time. I don't care if it's for 40 years. And they're not going to count your cell phone payments, on time as they may be, towards your credit worthiness or your fundability, it's not going to happen. So what happens is there are people who are not already in the credit system, and FICO. I've been to 3 FICO worlds now with various members of my team, and in each case, one of the biggest theme of FICO world is inclusivity. How do we collect, trust, and have FICO be able to score how many more variations of trade lines? Cell phone bills. It's cell phone bills and rents and childcare, utility payments, and the like. So they're already ahead of the game. They're already 5-10 years out in their planning. For all I know, they read the very paper that Biden did and are like, "Hey, we need to account for this." And there's some great things we're going to talk about in just a moment. So but right now, the software that lenders are using already require you to have what we call trade lines, credit with reporting banks and other financial institutions and retail outlets. Okay, so banks. So now let's get to the automatic underwriting versus manual underwriting. For decades and decades, for a century and a half, manual underwriting was how loans got approved. They took the only thing they trusted were the actual documents, paychecks, W-2s. They want your tax returns. They want your financial statements. I don't know if you guys remember back in the day, it's been a while, but they used to, when you filled out a credit application, they said, what are your assets? Furniture, jewelry, furs. I mean, they would list, I remember the days where they would list every possible version of assets so that they could check you out and see if you were fundable. Well, here's the thing. We're moving, the last 10 years has been skyrocketing in the adoption of lenders to use automatic underwriting. And automatic underwriting, as we all know, FICO measures 40 plus or minus, depending on the bureau, 40 borrower behaviors, but they don't measure the characteristic of the borrowers themselves. This is so important. The reason why there is 0.0001, these are my numbers, why automatic underwriting removes discrimination from applications is because we're not sitting in front of another human being who might have beliefs. As outdated as these beliefs may be, they have beliefs about other human beings, about their gender, about their sexuality, about their race, about their gender and orientation. And automatic underwriting removes to the nth degree that any kind of preferential treatment for or against any of those bodies. They're measuring what you do, not who you are. I'm going to say that again. They measure what you do with your money and your relationships with lenders and merchants and retailers, not who you are. That's why automatic underwriting is so genius, and that's why it gives so many more people so much more opportunity. But the hitch is, to get a FICO score, you got to have at least one trade line for at least 6 months reporting to all three or to the bureaus, and you only get scored on that bureau if it reports to that bureau. So we're already back to that place we spoke a few moments ago, saying that if you don't have these trade lines, if you don't have these accounts, you're out of the game completely. No shot in hell at being approved, because you got to build a fundable profile, right? So one of the things that now, here's what's crazy. Both articles mentioned the uneven or discriminatory, the discriminatory facets of mortgages. And what I've told my tribe, what I'm telling you right now, everybody who's listening, here's the thing. Guess what? The last bastion, the last holdup in manual underwriting are mortgages. Some forward-thinking outfits are using automatic underwriting more and more and more. And we're getting more and more reports from our clients when we send them to these outfits. If your profile is banging, if your profile is awesome, then they're not asking for the traditional documents because the behaviors reveal your priorities, and those behaviors are trustable. And that makes them fundable behaviors, right? But for all of the lenders, everybody out there who's originating mortgages where a human being has to sit from another human being, boom, we're back into human beings not being good to each other. And I can't account for that, but there are a couple of things that may be in the works with this idea by the administration to at least begin to get some traction in a moment. All right. So now let's take a look at how this may not be a crackpot idea. Again, I'm not putting words in anybody's mouths. I have not read I haven't been in the meetings with the administration while they kick this around. But given what I know about the current lending environment, and what I know about the inaccessibility of credit opportunity to persons who aren't already in the credit system, this might be an idea of how this is going to work, may work. Again, I don't know, but there is a place for, there is historical precedent for government lending. SBA supports small businesses. And SBA is for Small Business Administration. And how many of us have received either PPP loans or EIDL loans out there in the world because the government is infusing money into the hands of small businesses so that we can get traction, we can keep people employed, we can keep individuals who are employed spending money on mortgages and rents and food and keeping this keeping the economy moving. We've done it with student loans. Now, we're not going to get into yay student loans or nay student loans. I'm saying there is precedent for the government to offer directly to individuals an opportunity to improve their education and move forward through higher education. There is a marketplace of individuals, fixed income, low income, that is completely underserved and is not being served well. And what I mean by that is that low income, fixed income folks who are less financially literate, they are predated upon. Fancy word for predatory lending or for subprime lenders, where the interest is regressive and it puts them further in a hole, puts the borrower in a hole because it's 12, 18, 36% interest. And yet small businesses, as a comparison, if you get an EIDL loan, it's 1% interest. So there is below the current lending economy, let's call it. Below the lending current economy, where people have trade lines, they're being reported, and that's the market that we address specifically, is people, how to optimize your personal profile, how to optimize your business profile so you can stay up here in this lending marketplace and get tier 1, tier 2 loans, right? Stay away from those predatory lenders, stay away from subprime lenders over there in tier 4, right? What about the millions of persons who aren't even close to having a trade line on a profile? How many don't have profiles? And because I didn't hear back from my FICO liaison fast enough, but in one of these FICO worlds that we attended, there's actually a number of the number of millions of persons estimated that do not currently have a credit score. And if you don't have a credit score, that means you don't have trade lines active and reporting, right? So I did not get back in with that number in time. So what I believe this credit bureau and the brouhaha around this credit bureau, sponsored by the federal government, may actually be, and again, not putting words in anybody's mouth, but since there is a marketplace for fixed and low income that's underserved and currently I call it in all my boot camps, being abused by high interest and high fee lenders, the administration may want to address that marketplace just like it did students and just like it did small businesses. If it does, there may be a place for a credit bureau that actually is based on other lending criteria, such as rents and cell phone bill payments and childcare payments, consistent payments. Now, the interesting thing is that the three credit bureaus and the lenders are not prepared to address that market. They're not. They want, and they've proven FICO out over and over for 70 years that it's a trustworthy model to lend on. But as we've described, that's above the folks who are in the current a non-lendable space or non-fundable space. So what if, I'm just painting a picture here, what if this bureau is the tip of the iceberg that is talking about how to address and lend to using different criteria and lend to this marketplace? It doesn't interfere. It does not interfere with the current FICO and lenders and credit bureau marketplace. No harm, no foul, every business as usual. But this new bureau may allow the collection of alternative data. And here's what's interesting. Now, FICO did not tell me this, so I'm being very clear. But since I know that for at least the 6 years I've been attending these FICO consortium, these FICO events, they are focusing on the ability to score this non-traditional data and be more inclusive. So I don't know, but I'm willing to bet that if I were this administration and this is the market that I wanted to infuse capital into in order to get the economy churning even further, and B, to create more opportunity to get people improve their borrower behaviors, I would probably go to FICO and say, so what do you got for me? What can we measure? What data can we collect that you've proven this FICO, a new extended inclusive model of FICO? Now, I've never seen that software. I just know that this is a big deal to them. And if it's a big deal to them, they are so forward looking. They're the ones who freaking got us into automatic underwriting, guys, years ago. So it had to be 20 years ago that they were casting forward to 10 years ago when automatic underwriting started becoming a big deal, right? So each one of these things are extremely important for us to create a sense of continuity so that we're addressing all the marketplaces, all of our citizens, but we're addressing them to the level that they're capable of borrowing. The administration isn't. I don't know what these trade lines would include. I don't know if there's government financing of auto loans. I don't know if there's a different version of government financing of mortgages. I don't know. What I know is for an entrepreneur, there is millions, tens of millions of people who are not able to qualify under the traditional lending model, but who very well may be, and most likely to some high degree, are faithfully paying the bills every month for maybe even a 24-month look-back period, are constantly faithfully paying their bills. And right now in the current credit system, they're not getting credit for it. If the idea of collecting different data or extending what data is collected to include these other things, these other types of payments that are being made by these underserved borrowers, I know that FICO is if they're not already prepared to deliver a fundability score on them, would love to get hold of that data in order to optimize and be able to create a score that would allow the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau to create a greater opportunity for more people to get loans. Yeah, it would be like taking Experian Boost to a whole new level, and so, there is a separate marketplace, guys. It is underserved by low cost money, and I don't know your politics. I stay out of that conversation. What I do know is that if there are low cost loans, our current government, every Republican and Democrat for years have sponsored micro loans in foreign countries as part of deals with other heads of state. What if these are micro loans in our own country that allow people to get credit for and get accustomed to, that they're held to a standard, but a standard that they can meet? Think of it this way. We all love chasing our FICO score, right? Even though we say that it's the fifth or sixth most important item being measured, we all love a 780 over a 680. We all love a 820 over a 720, right? I mean, come on, we all do. And there's a point of pride. And for those of you who are working your fundability journey, right? You're working your fundability in order to increase the fundability of your profile and the score that reflects it. The higher that goes, the better we feel about ourselves. What could we do for our fellow citizens without taking anything off of anybody's plate, without any kind of regressive tax on our part or on the administration's part? What if we could give tens, dozens of millions of our fellow citizens an opportunity to feel the juice we feel when we have a great score? What if we could give them a model that allows them to perk their hearts up and perk up their spirits because they're getting credit where credit is due? They're getting the juice, they're getting the punch, they're getting the benefit of being able to look themselves in the eye, like you and I do, that look themselves in the eye and say, you're doing great. Because the model they're working from allows them to get positive feedback and grow their fundability wherever they're starting. Now, if I had a magic wand, and the administration does not, so let's make that clear. If I had a magic wand, I would address this marketplace like 5 years ago. And as many of you already know, most of us know, our model takes into account the ability to insert any kind of credit modeling. If FICO had one that was more inclusive for this unserved marketplace, we're right there to teach and help and support every single borrower. I've never said I'm just after the 1%. I want every single borrower to know how fundable they are and have a path to get from where they are now to their dreams. So we stand ready for whoever may be listening. Get Fundable is a call to action. It is a battle cry for all borrowers in this country, my friends. It isn't for middle America. It's not for the wealthy. It's not for the ones who have 4 and 5 and 6 zeros in their bank account. It's for all of us. It's for everybody. And I eagerly await. I hope that all this brouhaha is simply a misinterpretation, a misunderstanding of where I want us to see, where I want us to go as not just a country, but as a financial marketplace. Remember, in my book, I talk about being able to create a healing of the relationship between borrowers and lenders. I don't care where the borrower is, and I don't care who the lender is, including and if it happens to be an agency like the SBA or the Sallie Mae for student loans. I don't care who it is. I want a fair and equitable access to capital and a system that allows us to see how well we're doing and get positive feedback so that we can grow and improve and expand from wherever we are now to wherever we want to end up. Everybody in this country has a Z. So I want everybody to experience their Z. Now, the beauty of this is nothing's going to change in this marketplace, you guys. Nothing's going to change in the marketplace of current lenders, current FICO modeling, current credit bureaus. That's going to business as usual. Boom, boom, boom. And we're going to help you become fundable every step of the way. There's more to do. And I'm eager to find out how we can participate, how we can make it happen. Whew. This is Merrill Chandler. And I want you to understand this proposal, these ideas. This isn't the final scene in Fight Club where the end of the movie, they're blowing up Experian, TransUnion, Equifax. This is not that. The system is here to stay. And as has happened in the past, there are many examples where the government led the way to address markets that were not addressed by the private sector. And the private sector began to trust, in this case, what if the top tier lenders began to trust the model and trust the data? What if everybody began to compete in the space to give opportunities to our brothers and sisters who have taken a hit financially or grew up in a financially deficit, in a financial deficit? I'm not going to blame them for their circumstances, and I want to give everybody the opportunity to look in the mirror and say, "You did it." This is Merrill Chandler. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Get Fundable podcast. Have a great night.
Thank you for listening to the Get Fundable podcast. Please leave comments because Merrill would love to read about your aha moments from this episode. And be sure to visit getfundable.com to read our blog, get important links, join our community, and much, much more, like ordering Merrill's tell-all book that is changing the world, The New F Word. And you got to tell your friends about this podcast because we want them to get fundable too.